For those that don't know, Dr. Carter G. Woodson initiated Negro History Week back in the 1920s. So my students who either work at the Office of Black Student Success or have been in some of my classes, we talk quite a bit about Carter G. Woodson and his development and efforts. And really without him, we wouldn't have many things like our ethnic studies programs, particularly Black studies. And I'm just reminded, giving them this ancestry reminder of Dr. Nathan Hare. I just got a book from him, one that he wrote a long while ago, but I thought they were out of print, but I found one. I don't know if you nerdy bookophiles out there who love to find those books, but Dr. Hare was a professor at San Francisco State, helped start the Black Studies program at San Francisco State, who's really spurred the conversations around ethnic studies all across the country. So this is a CSU type conversation that we're having here today. But moreover, I'm all the more excited about community college support. And I'll introduce some of the folks who are with our community colleges and why it's very important for us to have this conversation with both, but definitely focus in on 100 years of Negro History Week. So Dr. Carter G. Woodson was very adamant that Negro History Week, Black History Month, should be a time to showcase and highlight your knowledge. You should be doing those things throughout the year of learning about history, of sharing history, of being informed and encouraging one another with that history of overcoming throughout the year. So by the 1970s, Black History Month was officially recognized. And I'm going to do some Inland Empire ties. What's his name? Gerald Ford. He was president when I was very little. That's how old I am. And all kinds of things led up to him being president, but during his time, he was doing some interesting things, and he decided to go with making Black History Month an official thing. Why is that important right now? Given that, and I'm just pausing on Gerald Ford because he was lived the last years of his life in the Coachella Valley, near our Palm Desert campus out at CSUSB. But this current year, for whatever reason, or I should say 2025, 2026, the US federal government did not recognize Black History Month in the same way. Nevertheless, we'll still carry it forward here at CSUSB. Yeah. So I wanted to bring up one of my colleagues here from Outreach just to say a few words about how we're trying to connect our community colleges with our overall efforts and ethnic studies and all those pieces. Come on forward, Mr. Mark Rogers. Give him a hand.
Thank you. Greetings, everyone. So my name is Mark Rogers. I'm an outreach counselor in the Office of Outreach and Student Recruitment. And so I appreciate Dr. Gamble for inviting me on today to say a few words to you all. And so in our outreach department, although as Dr. Gamble just mentioned, this last year or so has been a bit different in how things have been done, but we are going to make sure that the work continues to be done, particularly with our partners in the community colleges. And so we have been very intentional trying to reach out to our local community colleges and making sure this work is done. I know that we are working with some of our local Umoja populations on those campuses to make sure that that grid is met. So we may not have Umoja here officially at CSUSB, but we have our BSU and other organizations. We want to make sure that those students are not lost kind of in that passage, lost in the sauce as they are making their way over here to CSUSB. And so that has been a big piece of how we are reaching out to our community colleges. So that's so short and sweet, but thank you all for having me.
That was perfect. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Right. And our interim chair, Dr. Brian Yaneski, he's going to come up and say a few words, particularly about ethnic studies. So please come forward.
Thank you, Dr. Gamble. And then we have some of our faculty here as well, but thank you, Dr. Gamble. It's a pleasure to be here. I am interim chair of the Ethnic Studies Department, and so far it's been a real pleasure to work with my great colleagues in that department. And I brought some flyers in case you're interested, but on my brief comments, I'll describe basically the structure of the degree. It's a good balance between core requirements and then allowing you to go where your interests are. I won't go through all of it, but the information's on the back of the flyer. We have one required course that's a university required course, that's Ethnic Studies 1000. Then you have some choices from the core, but then there are a lot of electives. And while you get a chance to take one of these with you, you can see that there's some structure, but there's some flexibility. And I think I find it overall to be a very well put together program with very enthusiastic faculty. So thank you again for giving me the opportunity to speak, and welcome again.
If you want some flyers, Dr. Nessie, maybe we can leave those out front. Ms. McCoy, would you be able to assist Dr. Nessie here? Ms. McCoy works with our Office of Black Student Success, and maybe he's just going to pass them all out because I know we're excited about our Ethnic Studies program here at CSUSB. I will say this, our Ethnic Studies program is 3 years old here on campus. Students have asked for more programming, more opportunities with our Ethnic Studies. And so it's exciting to be able to share what we have in those offerings. Also, really, this conversation was spurred by our conversations with local community college efforts. We got together online and shared some of our ideas and connections about community college, the Emoja program in particular, and making a connection once students come up this way to our Office of Black Student Success, our Pan-African Student Success Center, with supports by our Black Faculty and Staff Student Association. So we're looking to grow things all the more. At the end of this slide, I'm going to tell y'all a little bit about some of the other plans that we have, because I just got out of the meeting with the CSU, but I'll break that down in a moment. Was our dean able to make it?
She had planned on coming. I don't know if something came up right away, but we do have two of our faculty members here.
We do have two of our faculty members from Ethnic Studies here, and I just wondered if they could raise their hands so folks can see them, and we're glad that they are here. Yes, let's give them a hand. And so I had a chance to speak with the dean just for a bit, given that we had an event last week where Professor Dr. Jasmine Graham, known as the Shark Doctor, she came and spoke about her experiences coming all the way from South Carolina and her work, particularly with sharks, but also her work promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. And she said those words very much out loud in our space. And the kinds of things that inspire students to stay connected with faculty and to do research and to move forward in that way. One of our students who's in the back, I'm not going to put her too much on the spot here, Paris introduced her, and we talked about this kind of thing where I got to make a choice in who I am, whether or not I'm just going to be a researcher, or is my research going to be informed by who I am, and is it going to change the lives of other people, even if it's sharks, even if it's cybersecurity, but especially if it's ethnic studies. How does that work? How does that inform life? So we're excited about that piece. I wanted to give a shout out to anyone who's here from our local community colleges or who's participated and worked with their local community college. Okay. All right, raise your hand. Just want to get a sense of where we're from. I know San Bernardino Valley College because doing outstanding work with Emoji, you came here and I hired you because I knew you were going to do outstanding work. You already have, Jordan. Yes. Awesome. Okay. Yes.
Moreno Valley College, I'm the assistant professor of ethnic studies and African American studies, former Cal State University San Bernardino student.
Yes. And so we're excited about having Professor Jiles will be on our panel coming up. But I did want to give some of those shout outs, and I did also want to say that I just got off a call with folks around the CSU discussing a stronger partnership between Emoja, right, and the CSU, and particularly our CSUSB that we know and love. And I was very excited to say, because I'm on the call with them. Like they set up this meeting at 10 a.m., but I'm on the call with them going, and by the way, we're gonna have some folks from Emoja right on my campus. And we're having a strong conversation about ethnic studies and developing this pipeline today. So this is the first of what I hope to be many other events that we will have. So thanks everybody. Thanks for those introductions. Just want to pause on Emoja. It actively serves and promotes student success for all students through a curriculum and pedagogy responsive to the legacy of African and African-American diasporas. That sounds a little bit like ethnic studies and the kinds of things we're trying to do here. Emoja provides programming, curriculum, training, assessment, and knowledge sharing to colleges across the state, as well as strengthen relationships with transfer partner institutions like CSUSB, and cultivates Emoja programming with secondary schools. Emoja plays a significant role in the equity work in the community college system to close the achievement gap for historically under-resourced students. This is why we are looking to partner with Emoja and particularly talk about an ethnic studies pathway for students who are minors or majors in that area, but also who are trying to build a sense of belonging and a sense of community. So today's objectives definitely celebrate the 100-year anniversary of Negro History Week, promote ethnic studies. Hey, right on. Promote ethnic studies as a viable course of study. I'm just going to pause and say I have a friend who graduated from Long Beach State, their ethnic studies program, Dr. Danny Tabor. He was the youngest city council person at the time. He was 26 years old to become a city council person of Inglewood. He's just been appointed to part of a broader commission in Los Angeles. But I'd said all that to say he's an ethnic studies major, right? And there's stories like that all over the state. Dr. Shirley Weber, ethnic studies professor. Anybody know her current position with the state of California? Secretary of State, one of my instructors as well. Before I move on, I did want to introduce the dean of social behavioral sciences. We did pause. Did you want to come up and say a few words? Yeah, please. Yes.
I wasn't expecting to make a formal announcement, but sorry for coming in late. It's so great to see so many folks here today to, recognize this important occasion, as well as, provide an introduction to some of our faculty from our ethnic studies department. I think it's also really significant that we're here today because I don't know if you all heard, but the ACLU released a press release just a few hours ago noting that the Dear Colleagues letter has been conceded, which is really important. As that was an initiative, the U.S. Department of Education has conceded their Dear Colleagues letter, which limited really the types of discussions and instruction that could be taught in higher education. So this is all a very interesting time to be in this space and place, and for us to be together as all of this unfolds on a day-to-day basis across our country. So I thank you for being here, and I'm looking forward to getting to connect with you all later, depending on how we event.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's good news.
Yes.
That's very good news, right? In regards to the kind of work that our university has continued to be committed to. And so we decided to move forward, and we're continuing to move forward nevertheless, and good to hear these victories happening. As we were in the middle here, promoting ethnic studies, encouraging scholarship. My desire one day, because I ain't gonna call it a dream, because we're gonna make this happen, although dreams are good. But I think we're even closer now to the possibility of having students do research, right? Undergraduate students doing research in the areas of ethnic studies, in the areas of psychology, but answering questions that are important for the lives of Black folks. I'm looking forward to our office moving in that direction. So hopefully we can maybe win a couple of research awards at some of these broader conferences and events, because I know we usually have them during the spring. So this is a lovely event. I hope to grow it, but also some other possibilities, but encourage that scholarship. Also definitely foster a sense of belonging. So if you don't know somebody in the room today, hopefully you leave connected with somebody, and that's just me and my social capital dissertation life. I'm very much into people meeting other people to leverage opportunities on behalf of our students. So that said, I'm gonna call up a couple of folks here. Dr. Aaron Brown from Ethnic Studies, if y'all can give him a hand as he comes forward. Dr. Brown is with our Ethnic Studies faculty, but he's also been instrumental in supporting a course that we've developed, Africana Studies, like at the 1000 level or 100 level, an intro to Africana Studies course. Black Studies course. So, and that course, and even last year, we hosted an event that he really helped put together from Ethnic Studies. Man, that was with Audre Lorde. That poster that I have in my office from that event, whenever I do a Zoom call and she's over my shoulder, keeping me on track, folks always ask about that. Like, wow. It's her birthday. And it's her birthday today. Look at that. It's also my stepdaughter's birthday, so I'm gonna have to let her know. That's good stuff. Yeah. All right. Dr. Aaron Brown, you see, we just have good convo. I want it to feel like a conversation for the rest of the time. All right. Man. My good colleague, Dr. Robert Jiles, coming from Moreno Valley Community College. Give him a hand. So without him, this event would not be happening in the way that it's happening. We had a great conversation, as I mentioned before, with other Emoja colleagues about where we needed to go and make connections. And he suggested that ethnic studies may be the pathway and the conversation point that we need to have. So we began there. So we're very excited about those pieces. So I'm going to turn the microphone over. I know we had a few questions. Oh yeah, great. We got another microphone, and I'm going to join you as well. But my sense is we'll begin with 100 years of Negro History Week. What does that mean to you as a faculty member, maybe even as a person in the community? What does that mean? And yeah, we can start there. And I'm leaving it kind of open because we talked about many different things, but you had some ideas about where you wanted to share with the folks here. So excited to move forward with that.
Yeah. Yeah, so 100 years is significant for so many reasons. I think first and foremost, it illustrates the endurance of many movements that Black people have spearheaded for to uplift their own communities as well as to create wider communities of care for others. And so something that I really have been reflecting on as Dr. Gamble has been coordinating this event and also just generally over Black History Month is, thinking of what we carry with us as we continue to do this work, right? And whatever way that looks, right? Whether it's administratively, whether it's curriculum, whether it's community-based, whether it's activism. And so a part of what has been really resonating with me around the 100-year anniversary of Negro History Week is thinking precisely about how the work that we're doing here continues to echo through various generations of people. Certainly, we are not the first ones to have a panel, to be having these discussions about the needs of Black people or in Black students and Black communities, and wanting to build an infrastructure so that we can continue doing that and continue building pathways for people to be able to even articulate what their needs are and how we can continue to support them, particularly our students here. I think that's really important, especially in a time when there's so much sort of misinformation and really confusing messaging around like what the needs are within our community. There's all sort of misdirection around like what would help, right, uplift students academically, spiritually, emotionally, et cetera. And so I see the 100-year anniversary as just a continuation of a legacy, of a pathway, of a growing tree of care and support.
Thank you. It reminds me of a sense of urgency. I understand that Carter G. Woodson, created Negro History Week out of a sense of urgency for our people at a time when our knowledge of our history was not, it was known, not widely known, right? It was to counteract stereotypes about Black people. It was to uplift Black people, to give Black people something to celebrate about themselves, because the institution of slavery taught us that we were not good, that we were less than human. So what it means to be celebrating Black History Week and Black History Month, and even the legacy of Carter G. Woodson 100 years later, particularly in this moment that we're in, and I'll speak really candid. I am faculty at Moreno Valley College, so I hope that I could just say that there's still that sense of urgency, right? Because the fact that our government is actively trying to erase Black history shows just how important Black history is, right? And that it's powerful, and it can be used as a tool to disrupt, dismantle, reimagine, transform. And so it's very important that we celebrate this every year, but not every year, but just celebrate Black history every day, right? Because Black history is American history. Black history is world history. And yeah, that's it.
So I come to this conversation as a psychologist. I'm not an ethnic studies professor. I've been a psychology professor, but I'm very interested in how does historical information change people's life. And in relation to history and psychology is usually if you're going to develop a psychology for people, you have to understand their history. I had a professor at San Diego State. His name is Dr. Dario Vila. And he was developing at the time and fleshing out Filipino psychology. This is back in the 90s. He was traveling back and forth between San Diego and the Philippines. But the first thing he did was develop a history book in relation to particularly San Diego and the Philippine migratory experience or immigration experience. But also he started, from those stories, he began to better understand the whole psychology piece. And so he was one of my instructors at San Diego State, really taught me along those ways, but also taught me that, hey, there's more people out here. So I mentioned Shirley Weber earlier. She was at San Diego State, and she introduced me to Dr. Nathan Hare. My favorite thing about Dr. Hare, he passed away a couple of years ago, and he was in his 90s. He was on Facebook, and he would call me sometimes. and through like either Facebook or whatever, to check on students. And to me, that was a huge testimony to his intentions and care as San Francisco State started their Black Studies program. And this continuity of folks, going back to the urgency, he's doing this thing back in the 1960s, right, during very turbulent times. But at the same time, he said, we got to pause and build something here for folks to have. So another one of my mentors who's recently retired, but the former dean of ethnic studies at San Francisco State, actually lives in the Coachella Valley. So I'm excited because he just contacted me. He retired, left the Bay Area, came on down to Palm Springs, and he's already doing activism in the area. In a way that is inspiring, and particularly in regards to service learning and connection and building community. I'm pulling all these different threads because history, particularly Black history, particularly Black college educated history, is not separate from us. It's within us and very close to us. You're probably one bit of hands away from people who interacted with Martin Luther King. So, and the way I break that down, I personally am one set of hands away from enslavement. My grandfather was raised by his grandmother, who was an enslaved person. He held my children. It's not that far, that type of awful experience on my office is not that far away, but also the resilience is there as well. the resilience is there as well, the power, the strength, the beauty, and it's in these stories. So I'm looking at my mentee, officially became my mentee. We had a conversation. I ain't gonna call you out just yet, but we went to a library yesterday and we had a conversation about where can we learn more about these things. And we were at Starbucks. Fortunately, the interesting thing about most CSUs, there's a Starbucks pretty much in every CSU library. So we went to the third floor, and I've worked at 3 CSUs, and every third floor library has a set of Black books. And we go up in there, and I have to do some like spiritual work in my own head as I walk through there because we're about to see some things. And the ancestors literally pop off the bookshelves to let us know what it is. So when it comes to Negro History Week, I wouldn't have this whole experience without all these connections. It's not far away from us, it's within us right now, and it's incumbent upon us to pass that forward. In ways in which we pass that forward as we live in these interesting spaces where they're trying to either shut us down from the federal government, or as I heard some of my colleagues talk about, they shut me down right on my own campus, right? So the opportunity to connect is extremely important. That's what we did, and that's why I'm so glad all y'all are here today. But also the opportunity to speak out loud what it is we know about Black history. That's very, very important. And it's in the people, it's in the books, it's all around us. So, and yeah, I'm doing double duty here. So our next question has to do with like the importance to our students. What do you hope our students get out of a Black History Month or even one of your courses? I mean, you can take that anywhere you want it, but it's kind of wide open.
Well, the thing that sort of immediately occurs to me is sort of central theme that runs through our Black Studies course. So at the beginning of the semester, I tell my students, I'm like, we are going to be attending to this question while also exploring the landscape of the field, right? And the core question is, how do we increase our capacity to care for Black life in meaningful and dynamic ways, right? And we sort of make a constellation of like what that looks like through the work of various scholars, right? So we are adding context to this question through the work of scholars like Celia Hartman, like Moreno Hurston, like Nicole Hannah-Jones, and others, and many others, right? And so as far as like what I would like students to take away from my class, and also just Black History Month generally, right, is that this urgency that we feel around preserving histories is not just a matter of being able to say that there is data or evidence that people were here, but that these people were dynamic human beings, that they have lives and memories that are not disconnected from us, right? I tell my students too, I'm like, this question around care is really important because Black people are everywhere. There's not going to be an instance where somebody is not encountering a Black person, right? And being able to think about how you care for people and what that looks like is, in a lot of ways, asking, a part of that is making sure that you are always reflecting on the humanity of a person, right? And in a lot of ways, this country conditions us not to think of Black people as human beings, whether that be subtle or overtly, right? And so I take my students to task around like how we connect these sort of theories that are oftentimes abstracted to this sort of day-to-day interpersonal connection, right? Like what does it mean to be sitting in the present moment with a person who is carrying so much of this history in their body, right? What does it mean? How do we hold space and practice care when we're having conversations about somebody's grandfather's grandfather who was enslaved, right? In these moments, and how do we continue to practice that as we move forward? And so that's kind of how I go about it, right? I think of all the work and urgency as practices of care, not just like political action, not just, I tell my students, this class is not a learner's permit for you to say that you're not problematic anymore. Like are coming in this class to increase your capacity to understand people, not just for their sake, but for yours, right? You never know who you'll run into and what capacity they have to really enrich your life. And so, yeah.
So I've been thinking a lot about Kenneth Harris' work, and there was something that he said, the community is a classroom. And so what I do in my practice as a Black Studies professor, as an ethnic studies professor, is I first and foremost tell my students that the whole goal is to teach you the theory and the history, but also to give you the tools and understanding of how to put it into practice, though, because that is what is at the foundation of ethnic studies and Black studies, right? These were student-led social justice movements that were successful at what they did. But what these students understood, most importantly, were in spaces like this, they didn't have people who looked like them, they teaching them, they didn't see their curriculum, their experiences weren't reflected in the curriculum, but also they cared about their community, right? And so I try to create assignments that center community to remind my students, being at a community college, I have the opportunity to teach, a broad range of students that you can imagine. Anybody who's ever taught at a community college or attended a community college, I have 70-year-old Chicana women in my classes. I have 19-year-old students who are only there because their parents tell them that they need to be there, which is important too, because they're listening. And I have students who are not planning to transfer to a CSU or UC or another four-year institution. They're there just for knowledge. They're there to figure out how they can apply that knowledge to their lived experiences, right? So I am very intentional in establishing, this understanding that, that follows the African proverb, I am because we are, that we have an interconnectivity, right? And we are interconnected. And we're responsible for each other, right? And that also means not the work that we do is not just on the campus, but also in the community. So what me and my colleague and I have been doing, Dr. Melanie Lindsay, who was not able to be here today, but she was the first full-time hire at Moreno Valley College. We're trying to create, we are creating a program that bridges up, that builds a bridge between the community and MVC campus, RCC district, right? And, CSUSB is a part of that, right? Like Dr. Gamble said, I approached him and told him that I wanted to figure out a way, that the two campuses could collaborate, because this is my first academic well, my second, because I started at RCC. But I created a barbershop talk series to address Black men and mental health that is going to start at the end of March. We're inviting community members to attend as well. Now it's open to anybody. I do have some flyers. I'm not trying to promote our work, but this is like, we really are intentional about putting ethnic studies and Black studies into practices. Dr. Lindsay has created a Sister Scholar Circle that will do the same work. She's bringing in yoga, what do you call them? Yoga techs, right? To help, women who are struggling with mental health, to have a space for them to talk about that. There's a lot of things, I want to extend the barbershop talk series to local barbershops in Moreno Valley. I'm also talking to an owner of my barbershop, and he told me that there's some Black owners, the barbershop owners, who are interested in doing that work. So we want people in Moreno Valley who are not at the community college to feel comfortable about education, because I've heard a lot of rhetoric recently, and I'm on Snapchat, what is it? TikTok. And there's a group of Black folks out there that are sort of ahistorical, anti-intellectual. I don't know if it's a trend, but they are suspicious of higher learning institutions. I get it, right? Because these spaces do institutionalize knowledge, right? And even, community-centered knowledge. But I want to, kind of break that stigma and remind Black people in Moreno Valley how important education was to our survival, right? Always have been. Frederick Douglass taught himself how to read, right? For a reason. And he was able to, to be free, right? Because of that. Malcolm X, same thing. reading the autobiography of Malcolm X is what inspired me to go to college at 10 years after being out of high school. So it's really important for me and my ethnic studies colleagues at Moreno Valley College is to center community always and always, right? And create projects in the classroom that have them think about how the work that they do in the classroom can apply to the world that they live in. Moreno Valley has a lot of logistical warehouses, like most cities now in the Inland Empire. And so I have students thinking about environmentalism and environmental justice and things like that, so they can take that knowledge and build off of it.
Thank you. You got me thinking a little bit differently than I was originally going to answer the question, so I had to listen intently there. I will say we've had a chance to offer a course here, orientation course for students who are coming from our Black Residential Scholars Program or students who opted into the course. And it's a general orientation course. One of the things that I definitely wanted them to have, as we did today, is some ancestor reminders, connecting themselves with stories that they may not have heard growing up of people who've overcome certain things. So I'm very interested in the overcoming story. And I guess I get that out of the Black church tradition, very general. I'm not talking like religious tradition. I'm simply talking about testimony time, and of how I've overcome a particular challenge, but also how I can see myself in overcoming that challenge. You mentioned Me, We, the shortest poem that Muhammad Ali used to recite, or consubstantiation, brought me to Dr. Wade Nobles, who talks in particularly about that. I'm even pausing here, a friend of mine just passed away. He was the president-elect for the Association of Black Psychologists, and he wrote a book on Ubuntu, similar concept. One of the things that he would do, and he very much inspired me from the Association of Black Psychologists, and he taught a course at Prairie View A&M, which is a historically Black college in Texas, about 40 minutes outside of Houston. In that course, he would talk with students about their relationships, building a community of care, who they ultimately wanted to be to each other, and then to the rest of the world. So what I hope for our students is that they see within their study of history, but also in their study and their understanding of who they are, who they can be. So, and I'm going back to Dr. Wade Noble's work, Africana Studies professor up at San Francisco State. He talks about being, belonging, and becoming. And if you've seen me talk, you've heard me talk about this quite a bit. But we gotta accept Black folks as they are, where we find them, who they are, because we got a range of Black folks. And with the interwebs nowadays, whether it's TikTok or any of these things, excuse me, I'm an old man. Whatever it is, and whatever those connections are, we find ourselves in many different ways. I had a good conversation with a student, I think last week, about, and one of the students said, "Are you talking about the diaspora wars?" Right? There's a range of conversations that go on online, but the challenge is, I think, oftentimes people either lack the frames, or they even lack just a basic thing of understanding. Somebody's probably gone through what I've gone through before. And I'm connecting with James Baldwin in this moment, because he writes about this extensively, about not only being able to read, but also being able to write and being able to imagine, right? And if you are in affinity with Black folks, and particularly those who are seeking justice and beauty and love, you're very likely to pause in that moment if you find people who are going in the opposite direction and doing things that are harmful to other folks. And it's an unending well I've been able to find, at least in my career. When I was a student at Palomar Community College student, yes. We had one bookshelf of Black stuff. I didn't have any in my high school. So to find that one bookshelf was just a gem. So I'm going back to my mentee here. But this is kind of some of the work that I do in mentoring. I'll say, and I'm getting this from Malefe Asante, who is the chair of Africana Studies at Temple University, where they had one of the first Black or Africana Studies PhDs, right? In that program there. He talks about a double column of knowledge. So every semester, I would read whatever they assigned me, but I'd always go get a book by a Black author about Black folks and to better understand the work that I'm doing. There's an opportunity there to not only connect, but have an intellectual, philosophical, but sometimes even a soul frame for being able to solve the problems that are in front of us. In this part, at least for students. Dr. Amos Wilson was a psychologist, wrote several books, and one of his definitions, or at least connections with culture, is that culture gives us something that helps us to solve problems. So for those who, and this is a phrase I used to hear a long time ago, Black people have no culture, particularly Black Americans have no culture. Oh no, we solve a lot of problems on many different levels, and that culture helps sustain our lives. So it's important to be able to get back to that culture, and it's important to be able to have knowledge of that culture. And if I'm not passing that forward, I'm not doing anything for the culture. So as a professor, that's a big part of what I have tried to do in my career as well. Any other thoughts as we're wrapping up?
Also, I thank you both for your insights. I think it's really wonderful to hear these components in conversation with each other. But another thing I think is really important as I'm older than my students, but I did get my PhD in 2020 is, so another thing that I find a lot with my students in the classroom is like, I challenge them to dream bigger, right? And I think that that's really important because, I think a lot of people simply think the work of that happens in the space of like Black History Month or Black activism generally is just a sort of learning the history. And a large part of what I do in addition to teaching students history and theory in my classes is also it's contextualizing the knowledge that they already have, right? And so I feel like I spend a lot of time in my classroom being like, oh, actually you already have the skill set, right? And so you have the capacity to work in this particular role or go to graduate school. The amount of times that I've had conversations with students where I'm like, you are already doing the thing that I was doing in graduate school. Like you could do this, right? It is all these sort of the messaging that you get that makes you feel like you don't belong in a space like that has nothing to do with your capacity and potential, right, to contribute. It has everything to do with systems and structures that are trying to discourage you from entering into those rooms and having conversations, which your voice is so needed, right? And I think especially, and you brought up the warehousing sort of infrastructure in this place, I think we have like 12% of the warehousing in the country in this area. There is a vested interest to keep students from not dreaming bigger. And so I think in addition to this, to sort of connecting to community, learning histories, reminding people that they have the capacity to live out the fullest extent of their dreams. And I teach that as a part of the question that I ask, right? In my class is like, how do we increase our capacity to care? And a part of that is allowing yourself and others to dream as big as you can, right? Like that is just a part of our humanity to have the capacity to do that. And so I've been thinking about that a lot as we've been talking. A lot of people have the knowledge and skills, right? We just are not directing them or like are contextualizing that for them, right?
What was the question again?
I mean, like I said, every day is Black History Month. I think that it's important to report our stories, right? Because we don't know what the future is going to hold and know how far they will go to erase our history. So it's important that we tell our stories. I am a board member. Well, I was a former board member. I'm a survivor of Palm Springs Section 14, right? And so I know that my grandparents, my great grandmother were active they actually lived in Palm Springs in Section 14. That was the only place that they could move to out of Texas because of racist covenants, right? And redlining in Palm Springs at the time. They were just regular people, really supporting community, supporting each other. And as I'm doing this work, I'm sitting in the archive and I'm finding my great grandmother, and it's amazing, man. It's blowing my mind because I never thought of her as an activist or somebody who, was politically inclined. I learned that, her house was destroyed. My grandparents had bought a house in Banning because Banning had a bank. It was the only bank in the region that would loan money to, Black people to build their homes. And she was away one weekend. When she came back, her home was destroyed. And I saw a memo in an archive that I was sitting in that said, notify, it was a city council memo, 2 lines, notify Mrs. Fothery that her home was destroyed, actually just 1 line. And a couple of, I was blown away by that because I found her in the archive, but then I also found how she resisted that. I found an article, someone shared an article, Desert Sun article with me maybe 3 months later and said, I think this is your great grandmother. And the article talked about how my grandmother, Mrs. Fothery, sat in a Palm Springs City Council meeting in 1963 for 5 hours to tell them that they destroyed everything that she had, and then later on, I realized, I learned that she was a part of a caravan of Black people in NAACP in Palm Springs who traveled to Sacramento to ask for the state legislatures to get rid of the white-only hiring practices in Palm Springs. And her testimony was so powerful that the district representative, it swayed his vote, right? And he said it, and so this was recorded in a Black newspaper. And so I think, we have to think big, right? We have to understand a lot of times people, your family don't tell you all of the history. Go home and ask questions, though. I think it really gives me more courage and more strength to resist, knowing that my great grandmother, who was born a generation out of slavery, actually had a voice and she used it. And in a time that was so dangerous, to her, even being in California, right? So I think this is my final thought. Just record your history, tell stories, embrace storytelling as a way of recording history, keeping history.
What I was trained within the Association of Black Psychologists to know is that the power to define ourselves is one of the greatest powers. So getting in and digging into our own stories helps us with that definition. The way I read the autobiography of Malcolm X at 14 years old, very different when I read it at 54. But I'm having a different conversation with Malcolm then. Right? And some of it is about what could have been, because he died at 39. Right? I would say, go get a Black book this week, or that one that's sitting on your shelf that you haven't read, read it. Even if it takes you the next 6 months, take a bit at a time and get it done, because it will inform, it will change, it will transform you, and it will connect you to a broader conversation that is much needed, particularly at a CSU, particularly at a community college, particularly in your homes, and definitely on the Midwest. So with that said, I want to thank our panel. Let's give them a hand. And I did wanted to open up, and I already kind of voluntold some of our students from the Office of Black Student Success. So in particular, and I see some of our students from the BSU, special shout out to our sister president from the Black Student Union. And so if students, please take a moment to reflect on any of those questions that you may like to answer. As we were preparing for the event, I did want to hear more from student voices, because what is all this for if students don't have any thoughts or connection to it, right? So Yeah, yeah. And especially for those who I've already told, who'd like to go first? Oh, watch out now. Watch out.
That our ancestors didn't do it alone, right? That the experience is shared. Um, and then some of the history that I've learned later on in graduate school and even studying for teaching classes have been erased, and I didn't know how diverse Blackness has always been, right? You know, because we tend to be taught these grand narratives. And so that's something that's very important to me in my classrooms to allow, you know, my students to really understand how capacious Blackness is, right, and how communal we really are as people, you know. And so I think that capitalism has a way of making us think that we're, you know, individuals only, and sometimes, you know, working in the factory or in the warehouse or even working for academia sometimes can disconnect you from community. So I think just those instances in history where I can see where our ancestors came together to make things happen, right? It's important.
Thank you for your question. There's so much there. I think, man, the people, so one of the things that I sort of think about a lot with my students, in addition to their capacity to care and their capacity to dream, right, is also thinking about what it means to reframe our way of thinking so that we thrive, right? And what kind of conflicts do we encounter in that journey? Um, and so like I've had conversations with my students where I'm like, what if telling people to sort of imagine more expansive sort of futures for yourselves causes conflict? And I like always sort of circle back around to Bell Hooks's work. She lives in many of my syllabi for a reason. Um, but she has this like really generative understanding of conflict in the space of growth that I think is so important to think about, because I think students encounter conflict, whether that is structurally or institutionally or just even emotionally or spiritually as they try to succeed. And Bell Hooks is like, you know, there's not a love relationship that we have that's deep that where we don't encounter some form of conflict. And we can use that sort of knowledge as a sort of launch pad to sort of imagine even grander dreams for ourselves. And so I try to echo to my students, and in the histories that I like try to leave with them, right? Are all these moments of conflict where there's enslaved peoples doing mental calculus to escape north, or whether it's people trying to break institutional barriers in the 60s, or whether it's feminist movements later shaking the table, Black feminist movements later shaking the table. These are points of conflict that have like extended, that have allowed us to grow in really exceptional ways, right? Not only to care for Black people in more dynamic ways, but to also care for ourselves in more dynamic ways. And so, yeah, I think I hope that that answers your question. Yeah.
Good job.
Shout out to San Bernardino Valley College. Yes. December 2025, designated as a Black serving institution. During San Bernardino Valley College 100th anniversary this year. So hopefully you make it out to those festivities out to San Bernardino Valley College, our good neighbor. So yes, yes. Rayon Webb, who I've been alluding to earlier, man, coming from Negro Valley College? That's right, that's right. Here at CSUSB, working in the Office of Black Student Success. He had a suit on today, so I was gonna put him on the spot. So I'll answer the last question. I think Black history is the main reason why I'm in school, going into psychology, so that I can help the Black youth. And then, as she said, being in Black spaces, but also those same Black spaces have fraudulent people who don't actually help out. So I want to be that help that actually helps. Instead of helping myself, I want to help the community. So, I'd rather be in a shack helping people than being in a mansion pretending. So, yeah, that's that. I hope that answered the question. Yeah. Come on, man. I'm gonna prevail upon one more. She was sitting in the back. She knows her. Trinity Dowdy. Thank you, thank you. Any other student thoughts before we move forward and kind of open it up even more? Any other student thoughts? Mr. President, maybe? Yes, yes, watch out, watch out, watch out. Thank you. Okay, these Cal State University San Bernardino students are outstanding. Outstanding. All right. Yeah. And I just wanted to open up because we have a whole community of folks who are here, especially folks who are coming from community college. Any thoughts about how we can expand our conversations around supporting our students, but particularly around enhancing educational and civic opportunities for our students? And I'm going to give a couple examples. I know the Blue Foundation provides scholarship, internship opportunities for our students to go and learn more about civic leadership, right? But creating these symbiotic relationships within the community. We even had a meeting right here in this exact space for a Black college and career access network. And as folks are thinking about their answer to the question, man, we got so many more things coming up this month. If you have not checked out, just Google CSUSB Black History Month. We'll take you to our events list. But come back even next month. We got more stuff happening. So we want to continue our relationship and our connection with folks in the community. And we'll end this last part. I worked at Long Beach State for a little while with Dr. Marlana Karinga, who is retiring this year. I worked in Long Beach for 20 years. I cannot believe this, right? But the torch is being passed. But one of the things that he always talked about was service learning, right? And connecting the classroom to the community and learning out in the community and applying the things that you've learned out in the community. We can do that in more than ethnic studies is the model, but we can do that in many other spaces as well. And I would say the students, you can also demand that of your faculty. I did that when I was a student, particularly when I was at San Diego State. You can demand that of your faculty and make that connection to changing the lives that are around you. So any other thoughts? Anybody in the community have any other thoughts or questions before we move forward? Like I said, I wanted this to be a conversation as well. Not to put them on the spot, but I'm so excited that folks from National Black Grad are here. Yes, Debbie Collins, who really been a great partner in supporting students. Looking forward to May 3rd. Will be the largest in my known universe, the largest high school graduation celebration in a Black cultural specific space and place right here at this campus. So looking forward to that. I see your hand, and then I'm going to come back to you. Yes. No. Okay. I'm going with that.
One of the things that I think about is our high school students, and just like you said, sometimes they're in high school K through 12 and they don't get to experience. It's part of the reason why Black Grad started. They don't get to be in Black spaces. And they may have a BSU, like a club or something, but one of the things that could really help connect and build community is to have our ethnic studies, Black studies come from the college, the community college, the university, and go and have conversations or storytelling at the high school level, at the elementary school level. It is a beautiful thing. My son is 10. We just got sent a picture, and they're reading Malcolm X. He's in the 5th grade. And so one of the things that I think we can do to help us continue to become, right, and to be, is to start having these stories being told as young and as early and as often as possible. And then our students get to see that I may not necessarily be in this Black space right now. And I think you went to school in Redlands, huh? Baby touch. And then to be able to just see it and say, this is what's out there, and have these little pockets of community that they can connect to. I think that would just be so special to them. And I remember when I was little, I got it from church. We had an orator, his name was Wilbur Brown in San Bernardino, and he knew every story about the Black family. He knew everything. And when he passed, nobody else told the story. And so I think we need to start telling these stories, and it just from family history to everything. And we need to become those orators that we look up to. Thank you.
I'm just going to pause and touch and agree with my brother here. We got some work to do with our pre-college program to get some of our folks off campus out there.
Mr. Webb, you hear the work that we are already working on, getting out to local middle schools, high schools, and elementary schools as well. So this is in the works. We just need to coordinate.
Okay, so one thing that I would say that I did notice after inviting one of my former students to speak to my current students is that we at the community college level don't necessarily prep them properly for the university. When it comes to the programs that you guys offer, when it comes to the programs that we offer. So if we have similar programming, trying to do better at putting those things together so they have a realistic expectation with that pipeline to see, okay, this is what we can do for you here, but when you go there, this is what they have. Because one of the strongest feedbacks that I usually get from students is once they transfer, they are lost. So they don't know where to go, where the money resides. So that is something to which we I know that we have to do better at.
One of the things I was thinking about, and this is something we can do better, is just preparing students to be able to have that generational conversation. I think it used to happen in churches, but you don't see it as much. And I don't want to call people old, what's called seasoned people. Seasoned people talking to young folks and young folks talking to seasoned folks. It feels like there's just not enough practice of that going on. And when it is so garbled that the technology and the weirdness of looking at someone in the eye is interesting. So I think we gotta just create those spaces, and I know we try and do that, but we have to do more of that. Because I think that's where we lose out is, when you need mentorship and you need resources, there's a lot of folks that have them, but you don't know how to ask, you don't know how to develop relationships, and you don't know how to leverage, and those are critical skill sets.
This is so good. I wish we had more time in the day. So we're just gonna have to make that time. So I'm inviting y'all back, in particular to have a discussion around some of these pointed things that we need to do in the community as well. We definitely need to move forward with supporting our students on campus. And as you can see, our students are amazing. They're thinking deep about these things. But we definitely need to have those connections. One of the things that we do here on campus is we have a Harambe gathering. Harambe meaning let's all pull together. And we work on a calendar, but we also seek to align our mission and activities. So we did that last year internally on campus. I think we also need to expand that with our community partners, particularly our community colleges who are represented here today. And one of the things that I love that community college does is Black Student Success Week, yeah, in April. So we can do Black stuff outside of February too, because I wore out February. I'm glad it's a short month. Some people used to complain about it being a short month, but I'm glad it's a short month. So looking forward to that. We're coming close on time, but I said before, you've heard from some amazing people. There's somebody in this room that you have not had a chance to meet, or in our sister Jordan's case, it's been a little while. She was out here giving shout outs to everybody. But I want to make sure that you meet somebody today that you have not met before so we can continue the networking, we continue the growth. I got a good soundtrack here. We'll play out on our soundtrack coming from the 2001 movie, Boycott, about Martin Luther King, which featured an actor playing a young Jesse Jackson. Shout out to Brother Jesse Jackson as he has passed. And he's with us now in the ancestor realm, however it may be. All right. So connect with somebody, give somebody a hug, handshake, a pound, exchange that information. Thank you everybody for coming. Yes, and for students, if you're interested in being an ethnic studies major or minor, please fill out our interest form. Please fill out our interest form for students if you're interested in ethnic studies major or minor.
Thank you.